Hi everyone, I'm known as Happy Fairy Art for my videos on TikTok. I frequently post 10 to 45 second vids on all my art projects, plus tips on how to create beautiful pieces. I'm going to show you a list of items that you will need in order to make it easier to start your first resin project.
The first obvious thing you will need is resin. There are so many brands that it can get confusing. I use New Classic Resin's 1-to-1 mix, which can be easily purchased on Amazon and delivered straight to my front doorstep. This brand has worked well for me as I know how to use it with minimal bubbles. It also has a beautiful clear shine to it once it cures. I recently just purchased Designer Epoxy to try out, which is a 2-to-1 mix. It's been delivered recently, so I'll let you know how this one turns out too. You will also need to buy plastic mixing cups to mix your resin in, which can be found at your local dollar store. You can also buy these silicone mixing cups that can be found on Amazon. They are really awesome to use because they are super easy to clean and the leftover resin peels right off once it dries the next day. You will also need mixing sticks from the dollar store. The ones with the pointy ends come in handy with pulling out lint and dust that may fall into your resin. An even better option to use are these silicone sticks that I've yet to purchase from Mrs. Colorberry. They're super easy to clean and are reusable. I've also heard that using non-wooden sticks could minimize the bubbles during mixing stage. A very important investment to make is proper protection equipment, like any one of these 3 filtrated masks that I own, which can be found at Home Depot or Amazon. Some resins can cause long-term cancer effects, and you definitely don't want to be breathing in these fumes. Always read the warning label on your resin to see the side effects, as it's always better to be safe than to be sorry. You will also need a box of disposable gloves, or these chemical-resistant nitrile gloves for even more safety to protect your hands and skin from touching resin. Your projects can get really messy and sticky, and resin can be highly toxic once mixed, so you don't want to get any of it touching your skin. This leads us to the baby wipes. These are surprisingly effective for cleaning resin right off your skin right away, better than using soap and water. You will also need to cover your workspace with plastic garbage bags or plastic shower curtain from the dollar store. You can peel the leftover resin right off the plastic and keep these bits for a future abstract project. Then we have some tools that you can use. Here you can see a torch, heat gun, and 99% alcohol. The torch is used to pop bubbles, but can damage your molds by making the resin stick. I have enough torn molds that are in the trash now. The torch gun is normally best to use on resin geode wall art projects. You should also have a small fire extinguisher nearby if you're going to use the torch because it's an open flame. The heat gun can also pop bubbles, but may also damage your molds from too much heat. You can also accidentally overflow your resin out of the molds because the heat gun can blow strong air out, but it's really great for enhancing beautiful textures and patterns in your resin artwork. I have the 99% alcohol in this picture here because in my opinion it's the best method to pop bubbles in your resin without damaging your molds. Buy a spray bottle and spritz your mold a couple of times before and after pouring to see those bubbles disappear. Just don't go too crazy because you can also change the way your resin cures if you add too much. Masking tape is perfect for cleaning your molds and removing the lint prior to pouring your resin in them. It's also great for taping your canvas to prevent resin from dripping all over and having to sand them off on your geode projects. A basic leveler is handy to have to ensure you have a leveled surface. There's nothing more frustrating than a project that's been ruined because your table wasn't leveled and your resin has cured lopsided. You may also want to invest in a no-name brand Dremel that can help you sand your sharp edges down easily. If not, sandpaper or a nail file works fine too. A handy tip to have is plastic cling wrap to cover your most commonly touched areas. As you can see here, I've covered my doorknob as it can get super sticky with my resin hands sometimes. You'll find other things that you'll want to cover in plastic wrap, as you can replace it whenever it's needed. You will eventually want to buy a cheap $15 digital scale, as it really makes measuring your resin mix so much easier. Instead of pouring your resin into 2 cups and then mixing it, you can just use 1 and measure exact amounts on the scale as needed. This tent cover is the best thing that I have found for covering your completed resin projects once you are done pouring. They are lightweight and easy to use for keeping dust and lint out of your small projects. You don't know how many beautiful pieces I have with one annoying piece of hair or visible lint that I can no longer sell to my clients. You can also find these at the dollar store or on Amazon. I also have these really neat drying racks to let the resin cure in. They are actually desk glitter trays from IKEA, but are handy to use because they save desk space and allow me to start new resin projects without having to wait for the current ones to dry. Now onto the fun stuff, coloring your resin. There are tons of brands to use like Mrs. Colorberry, AGA Art Studio, New Classic, and many more. It's probably best to first start off with purchasing a variety pack of colored mica pigments online. This can cost as low as $18 to $20 for a pack of 24. You'll be able to experiment and play with different colors to see how they mix and work within the resin. Mica pigments are the best to use for coloring resin because they won't change the way the resin cures. If you are going to use acrylic paints, which you can, remember to use only 10%, or else you will change the way the resin cures. I normally use the Liquitex acrylic ink drop sometimes, and it works fine. You may also want to try purchasing a set of alcohol inks. They are super easy to use and are fun for creating those really cool 3D effects in your resin. Drop alcohol into clear resin and watch anything you do turn out super amazing. You will also feel super amazing. And finally, we get into the different types of molds that you can try and have fun with. You definitely want to invest into the smaller molds, as 99% of the time you're going to end up with a little bit of leftover resin, and it's best to pour them into these tiny molds that can be used for other creations, such as keychains and bookmarks. Resin is an expensive art medium, and you don't want any of it to go to waste. Then we have circular geode coaster molds, seashell trinket trays, circular coaster molds, square coaster molds, more geode coaster molds, the ones with the holes in the middle, square and circular ashtrays, domino sets with dices that I've yet to try, and cell phone stand molds. If you plan on learning how to do resin geode paintings, you will also need to purchase these wooden canvas boards or make one yourself with MDF wood boards. Then you will also need to prime the board with gesso from any brand.
So I hope you've learned a little bit of how to start your first art resin project with this video, and I'll be listing the list of materials in my description down there. Click the subscribe button as I'll be posting more beginner resin art videos for you to learn on your art journey. Take care.